Welcome you over into our nice, cozy expo room. It is great to be here, and we appreciate you spending time with us as we hope to dig into something that we think is very interesting for all of us, all five of us personally, as we now enter the NBCU Academy's Next Level Summit Expo room. We are all storytellers, and we're going to be exploring documentary filmmaking in this conversation. As you may have seen in the panel description, is your passion documentary filmmaking? Hear how award-winning documentarians have grown their careers while elevating marginalized voices, both difficult within themselves. And I want to welcome all of you to this session. I'm Richard Louie. I'm an anchor over at MSNBC and also a documentary filmmaker. My second film is coming out in May. It's called Unconditional. For all of you that are joining us right now in our room, we're recording the session, so don't be shy. We're also all four of the panelists, myself, here to answer your questions. The amazing four panelists across the country joining us today to talk about their careers in documentary filmmaking, answer your questions, and I want to introduce each and every one of them right now. First off, Janelle Augustin, as the Original Voices Fellowship Manager. She is here with us to share more about the program. Can't wait for that. Brandy Henderson, Senior Manager for Programming and Partnerships, joining us from Comcast and BEX, Black Experience on Xfinity. Is that called BEX then?
Yes, we can call it BEX.
Great,
the cool
great,
kids
great.
call it BEX. So you're in, Richard. We can call it BEX.
The curated channel features the largest collection of independent films on demand. That's amazing. And we also have Conrad Beilhartz and Jean Ream. They are both 2022 Original Voices Fellows, part of the team who made the award-winning documentary Bad Press. Conrad is a producer. Jean is an editor and associate producer. I just want to say it's great to be with all of you. It's a tough space. And you really have to have this sort of strange sixth sense and muscle to be in it while still working in a great company that we all get to be part of. I want to remind everybody to submit your questions into the Q&A section if you're brave enough. Yeah, of course you're brave enough. Click share audio and video button at the top of your screen if you want to let us know when you're ready to come on camera. And we'll hit that Q&A session about 15 minutes before the session ends, and the session ends about a quarter after the hour. And we're also going to be watching the chat for comments as well. So feel free to do that. We already have, look, the questions are already coming in. But first, let's get to this. I want to start with Conrad. Can you tell me about the role of what it means to be a producer from your perspective of a documentary? And you can bring in examples of how you're working on Bad Press or other projects you've been on. And by the way, I want to remind our panelists, if you can keep your answers short and feel free to interrupt each other, just be nice.
Yeah, definitely feel free to interrupt me. I tend to chat. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I think any producer would explain, like what a malleable title that is. But ultimately, the way I've always kind of explained it, and the way I think about it is that every film is like a company, and in fact, it literally is a company. So every film has its own company, and the producer is sort of the like CEO or COO of that company, depending on kind of the breakdown of duties and how creative you are, how sort of business minded. But ultimately, you're sort of managing the actual project from anywhere from originating the idea to sort of, and literally the person paying taxes every year is the producer, or the lead producer anyway.
That's always fun.
So yeah, I mean, it's not the most glamorous, but also like somebody does this. And the way I see my role is basically as a facilitator and logistics manager for creative minds. And so, if there's a creative voice that, and as you all kind of experience in our lives, like the most creative people tend to not be the most organized and sort of like practically minded. And so they need somebody, a producer, as I to help guide that and craft that. So that's how I see my role. That's certainly my role on Bad Press is very much that. I mean, me and my creative partner Joe, one of the co-directors of the movie, we were pitched the project and by Becca, the other co-director, and her partner, who's another producer. And here we are 3 years later.
So are you saying you're the messy person or you're the clean person? Which one?
Weirdly, I'm quite messy, but like organizationally, I'm quite clean. So like in personal life, I think I am a messy person.
And for folks, very quickly, what's the role of the director versus the producer then?
That's, it's malleable. Like I said, it's sort of but definitely the director is more of the creative head. So creative decision making, any sort of a director is the person who has final say on any creative thing. So I can push back, usually because of budget reasons. Usually I'm the one if somebody has an idea, the director has an idea, they say, I want to do this, I think it would look great, blah, blah, blah. And I say, okay, that's going to take this camera, this much time, these many flights, this many thing. This is how much it'll cost,
Right.
Can we do it? And maybe there's a way to mitigate that.
Okay, so one of the roles, Gene, over to you as an editor, and this is different if you're a news person or coming from news like myself. And as I moved over into documentaries, when my head was just started turning backwards and turning in like 360s, where what I thought a role was different in documentary space. And when we talk about the director really being your creative CEO and your producer being your fiscal or organizational CEO or lead, right? Mm-hmm. Let's not forget the editor, because the editor in documentary space is, here's all the film, here is all the raw.
Yes.
Now make something beautiful with it. I mean, talk about your role.
Yeah, I love this analogy right now. So I do have one for editors, but it's not in the company setting, but I can put it in a company. So what if like we are a company of manufacturing like dishes or recipes, and the director is sort of like shopping and gathers all the ingredients for me, and I'm the chef, and I look at what we have and think, okay, we can make something out of this. Or I say, and then we figure out like what goes where, when, and what the overall dish will look like that we can serve. So editors in documentary spaces are writing with the footage, and we're trying to use them as like words. They're like puzzle pieces, and we create like an overall picture, like overall story that's compelling and immersive and like character driven. So it's still, people think that documentary films are kind of dry or informative, but I disagree. I think it's super creative and art, like it's an art. So editors in the documentaries are it's very creative. We're not just putting things together. We're like writing together with the director and the team.
It's interesting, Gene, because some people might think, don't you start with a script or a very tight something or other, and like do this, then that shot. What's the approach you most often see, Gene?
I think it depends on each project, and there is some value in like stepping back and looking at the overall structure together and think of it as a story, and then knowing what we have, what we got, like where they can belong. But it's not really, oftentimes that's how we start, but it changes because it's real life one. So like nothing that we predict that will happen or like write out and this like in the grants like actually plays out, and what we have to worship is the footage. Like what we have is the footage. Yeah. So we make sense out of it. And there's some like exercises you can do, like storytelling exercises to help you shape it. But ultimately it's not based on, it oftentimes goes off the script.
Yep. And this is, again, we're talking about nonfiction. And so you're dealing with whatever you got is in front of you. For instance, on my next film, it took us 2 years. We've been editing for 2 years and 2 months. And coming from daily broadcast news, when I'm used to editing for 2 to 4 hours, and then you go live, 2 years and 2 months is like forever. It's like, now, this takes a lot more than a director, producer, and editor. There's so much on the operational side and resource side. How do grants and supporting programs like what you do in Original Voices of the Fellowship fit into this ecosystem that at the end gets us some amazing documentaries? Give us your insight.
Sure. So, a film is also, like you said, not made by just one person. It's made by a team, but it's also made by a community of people who are supporting the artist's vision. And so there are a range of different non-recoupable grants, which means, you're given a certain amount of money and then it's yours to do what you need, versus an investment where if you make a profit, which is pretty rare in documentary, then you need to share it with your investors, which is another story.
Talk about that, about the profit thing really quickly.
Oh gosh. Well, independent documentaries, usually the budget is between like $1 and $2 million if you're lucky, and you get all the grants that you apply for, and it takes you, I don't know, maybe between 5 to 10 years to make it. If you turn a profit, if you get distribution and then you turn a profit, odds are the first people that are going to get paid are, the team, hopefully also your protagonist, and then maybe your top sort of tier of executive producers and the people who invest around $100,000 or more. And so we hope, getting back to your original question, that there's a community of people who are giving because they understand the film's value in the world and they want to support the artist's trajectory over a period of time, not just one individual film. So Original Voices is one of those programs where we support inclusive filmmakers who are telling stories that are from the inside and really thinking about, how do I add to the conversation that already exists and say something new and innovative, and are also pushing the form forwards. There's a lot of grants that exist that have, diversity focus, but I'm also thinking about the form itself and the craft and really centering artists and artistry and listening to the artist's voice, not only to tell just a story that might be like an issue-based film, if that makes sense. So that's what we're doing at Original Voices.
Great. It's fantastic, because you have the structures to support independent filmmakers in the documentary space so needed, based on just that the revenue side, the money side is lower than it is for narrative side. Again, it's not an oppression Olympics, but I'm just saying it's difficult in documentaries, right? I want to move over to you, Brandy. Explain your role, and when it comes to distribution, and this is where I think Conrad and Jean and Janelle can, in what they've said so far, completely feel, is like it's all of a sudden when you're done with the film, a lot of filmmakers say, okay, here's the film. And doesn't it just get seen by people? Don't you just flip a switch?
I wish.
Right?
I'm sure we all wish. Yeah. So I work on the Black experience on Xfinity, and that's a curated channel and destination that's carried by Comcast across all of our platforms. And this was launched 2 years ago. And we created it for a few different reasons. One, we wanted to provide a unique entertainment experience for our consumers with the best of Black entertainment, film and TV, and outside of film and TV, just any other type of short form, long form content that through research, we know that audiences are engaging with more. The other piece of standing this up was we noticed how many talented voices there are out there with amazing stories to tell. And given that we have such a large audience, why not use EX as a platform, or BEX, for those of you all that are in here early, as a platform to work with independent filmmakers and distribute their films through our platforms. So we do that in a couple different ways. Like I said, we'll work directly with the filmmaker, which is what we did for the Black Beauty Effect, which was a 3-part docuseries that came out last year, available on Xfinity for y'all to go check it out. And we worked directly with them. And in that case, there was a broader push around it. We did provide funding to help them finish the film and as they were producing it, but we also provided a lot of marketing support and just through on-platform marketing tactics. Like when you turn on your TV and you see your grid, there could be a message that points you to a new doc that's out that folks can watch. So the point in BEX really is to just provide that experience and then to serve up content that audiences are looking for. And they're thirsty for new content, for interesting spins on documentaries and things. I've seen really cool stuff on something as simple as bike riding, So Yeah. So from a distribution side for Xfinity, it really is just providing that platform and elevating their content to as many voices, or excuse me, as many eyeballs as possible, and really supporting their story and keeping it authentic to what they're trying to achieve. We don't want to change anything about their work.
What's the one sentence, Brandy, that you would give to filmmakers, aspiring filmmakers in the room? And again, thanks for joining us here at the Next Level Summit. Thanks to NBCU Academy, as we are in one of the expo rooms and we're talking about documentary filmmaking. What would be your one sentence piece of suggestion that on distribution that filmmakers should remember?
I would say stay authentic to yourself. Don't try to do what somebody else is doing or has done. Do your own. Everybody has a unique perspective. So that would be my 1.5 line.
I would also say, because that might be seen as the last step of your process, is to think about it now.
Yes.
Because a lot of times filmmakers get to that step and they're like, oh, now I got to go to distribution. Wait. I thought,
Yeah.
So talk to Brandy first is what I'm saying.
Definitely.
Early on. Talk to her early on. All right, we got a video question now, and it's from Philip. Philip, if you can turn on your mic, turn on your video, and ask her a question, we'd love to hear it. Philip, we're calling Philip. Hello, Philip. Now, as Philip does that, I'm going to ask a question. So, Philip, when you get your camera going, we'll get to you. I have a question to you, Gene, from Caitlin Eregoyen. She says, as an aspiring editor myself, I want to ask, what does your typical workday look like? What programs are you proficient with, and which ones do you use most often for documentary projects?
Yes, I use both Avid. Bad Press was an Avid, so I learned Avid for that project, and I'm really happy because it's a great program, super stable. And right now I'm using Productions Premiere Pro on another project. And I try to work 8 hours, but that's a dream, so it's more like 10. But there's a push for 8-hour work days for editors, because that's, yeah. And that's it.
All right, great. And do you tend to work nights, mornings, or is it different every day?
For me, I like to keep it consistent. So like 9 to however long, every day.
All right, fantastic.
But, yeah.
A question from Isabel Langston. I'm a production assistant in news trying to transition into documentary work. How would you recommend someone who is early in their career to transition from news to film and documentaries? Janelle?
It's a good question. And I think that, if there's another space you want to work inside of, the best thing to do is expose yourself to other people who are working in the field. That might be attending film festivals, getting to know people. If there's a certain sort of role you want to play, if you want to be a director or a producer, start to meet other people who play other roles and figure out how they're doing it, but also people that you could collaborate with. You can collaborate with your friends. You could collaborate with other coworkers who share that experience. But it's never too late to try something new or to go back to something you were doing before that you're really passionate about. I totally recommend it. We only have, one chance to say what it is that we want to say, and it's best to sort of live authentically and live into the fact that maybe you're an artist, maybe you also are a journalist. It's okay to be both. It makes great work. And so I would say, just expose yourself to the world, and also really articulate your desire to want to work in this field. Other people will hear you and listen and offer you opportunities. So, just put yourself out there, and also maybe build something practical is build an artist website for yourself where people can contact you, and you can put your CV and your portfolio online so that someone like me could find you. That's really helpful.
And if you're in a company like Comcast, NBC Universal, sorry, Gene and Conrad, but ask Gene and Conrad to shadow them. Get in there, get in the field to make the mistakes and make the successes. That'll be really great. Guess who's here with us? Marilyn Howard. Hey, Marilyn, you got a question?
Hi, yes, I do. How many roles should you play as a film documentary producer, director, video editor, because I kind of like all of them, but you really don't want to get burnt out or whatever. Or be called, like what they say, a jack of trades, a master.
Yeah.
Master of none.
What would be your advice?
I would say
Can I jump
Jane.
on? Yeah.
I would also say Jane of all trades, right? There you go.
Yes. If I can jump on this question first, because I feel strongly about this. I think if it's a film that's personal to you, like say it's your family story, pick one role, because you're going to need a team of collaborators who can tell you what you're not seeing, what you're missing, and also help you expand outside of your current community. If it's not a personal story, maybe you can direct and produce, but I feel very strongly that if it's a personal story, you need some other eyes. What do you all think?
Yeah, I guess I want to weigh in too that in most cases, especially if you're doing this independently, there's no one else in the world that wants this to happen. So like you have to drive it forward yourself. And sometimes that means, especially if there's no funding, you're gonna edit the sizzle reel. You're gonna be the one who makes those decisions. You're the one who's gonna work for free. You know what I mean? So not that I don't advocate for, slaving yourself to some project, but if you're not passionate about what you're trying to tell, it's not going to get told. No one's going to come and give you the permission to do it. And I kind of hate that phrase, and I'm sorry I said that, but it's because it's not about permission. It's just that genuinely there's a lot of content being made out there, and unless you make the traction for that project, it's going to eventually peter away, and if you lose your energy. So and you can't count on necessarily funding coming unless you actually have something to show, which requires you to do a lot of work to get yourself to that point. So just it's not super optimistic, but also it's, I think, real. Like you have to have the passion and drive to actually make that happen, and sometimes that means fill whatever role is needed at that moment.
Go get it, Marilyn. Go do it. Go do it.
Ultimately, you do want to work with a team, though. It'll always be better with a team, but that requires money usually. So that's the hard part.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey, Lana.
Hi.
What are you doing?
So sorry. Like it kind of jumped on its own. I was waiting for permission. That's what the prompt did.
Oh, that's okay.
So,
I'm just saying, hey, what do you got for us?
So, God, how do I frame this question? I've heard so many people talk about, especially in this space, it's all about networking. It's all about getting to know people. It's all about how you add value. A lot of people say these buzzwords and they're super great. But the thing is, like, how do you even get your foot in the door when you ask? And then somebody's like, just hold up. You sound a little thirsty. I need you to take a step back a bit. And it's like, you still want to be in this space. You still want to help. You still want to contribute. And you're trying to think of all these things that you can offer in terms of whether it's through broadcasting or editing or anything like that. So as industry leaders and professionals, I'm curious as to what you guys look for in terms of, collaborating with people or looking for a mentee. Like, what really is the secret sauce to put yourself out there and make yourself stand out?
Who wants to go first? Jean?
I can jump in.
Okay, go, Randy.
I'll jump in real quick because I think somebody else asked this too. I would say film festivals, that is where we see all of the content, not all of the content, but a large majority of the content that we license. That's where we see it. So I would definitely recommend film festivals. And then Persistency, one of the projects that we last signed, they let us know they pitched it for 3.5 years before they found somebody that really understood the story that they were trying to sell. So stay persistent in film festivals would be mine.
Yeah, and if possible, work. And I think I have a better idea of like who a person is once I've seen their projects or what they've done. So if you have something to show or share, I think that helps a lot. Because yeah, you can make friends, but like you should also be crafting your, honing your craft and skills. And in that process, I think you'll meet people who sees like something that they want to, the inspiring that they want to work with you on, and it could happen. That's like how I met my mentors, by working on my first project.
And
Great
to add
stuff.
to that, Jean did a lot on her first project. I mean, it was very much like a very personal story. I think for me, like, certainly when you say film festivals, definitely, like, I certainly built my network from going to film festivals, for sure. And you know, you just make friends, but I think the key is not necessarily, it's the networking, friends, plus reliability. Like, be reliable, bring something to the table, bring skills, you know, like, you can, there are tutorials that teach you to do everything, literally. Like, you can go and learn and and learn how to technically do the job of editor, or really every part of filmmaking. You can do you can kind of learn the programs, learn the language. That's all, like, doable personally. And then you just be reliable and be available, start working, and start somewhere, assisting someone, and just the more reliable you are in this industry, like, people who show up on time tend to do well, like, it's as simple as that, really.
Yeah. And if I can jump onto what Conrad was saying, something I look for is that you are authentic. It's extremely important in a truth-based field, that who you are, who you say you are, and the way that you present yourself is the truth. And also what you don't know, that you're very sort of, like, open to learning about other people's experiences, like Conrad said, learning new skills. But there are many artists who are maybe not so open to feedback, or if you want to be on sort of the executive side or funding side, that you are clear about, like, your own life experiences and where you're going to need help from your team to inform something that you're unfamiliar with. And if you're doing your job well, then you're constantly being exposed to new things that you are not previously aware of. And that's the beauty of this field. So, just be yourself.
In building on what you're saying there, Janelle, and everybody else, is we do this in broadcast news a lot. When you're interested in becoming a broadcast journalist, why you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
really walk into that room and know why you, from their perspective as well as your personal perspective. If it's to be on TV, which we often say in broadcast journalism, that's the wrong reason, right? If it's because you feel you need to tell stories, that you're driven to tell stories because of what your parents lived through, and because that you're a refugee that has come from Somalia. Whatever your journey is you, and that's why you. That's a big reason as to what we look for. And I think another thing would be, do you do this every day? Do you get up every day and think about or read about documentaries or stories? We may not ask that specific question, but what Janelle is saying here is, there's so many people that want to get into the space that will be looking for that. Is it your daily habit? Is it really your love? Do you really want to do this in all that you are? We're going to get to another question now, and Tevleen, stand by. We'll get right to you there. I want to get to this one, and this is from Emil from Spelman College, or Amel. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. You say, it was said that being a journalist and filmmaker makes you a unique asset. However, is it typical or possible to balance both? How does one balance the two careers? I'll kick it off. And since I'm a journalist and filmmaker, you can do both. One will be your main gig. One will be your side gig. You decide. And I wouldn't put any importance to say one is better than the other, only that you're pursuing two activity sets that really do sing well together. And don't give up on whether your main gig is journalism and your side gig is documentaries, or vice versa. Don't give up on the other. You have to keep on watering both of those plants, because both of them take a lot of time. So keep on watering them. One may get more water, one may get less, but at some point it'll pop. For me, making a documentary was not what I wanted to do. It never was in my wish list or bucket list, but it happened, and it was my side gig, and now it consumes my life. And I didn't want it to, but it just does, because you just get into it more. But I'm still a journalist, and I still work over at MSNBC and NBC News at the same time. So you can do both. And if you're starting out, figure out whether you're part of the IDA's local chapter, for instance. Do you participate in that space? Do you volunteer for a festival? You can do that, right? And keep that muscle. Keep on learning while your main gig is a journalist. All right, out to our panelists. Any quick thoughts on that?
I actually do want to say also, because I've attended a lot of this kind of thing, and it's pretty infrequent. Most people, I think, are fairly like self-conscious about this, but I can say very confidently, every documentary filmmaker I know makes money doing other things also, like other jobs. So there's not I can't speak to journalism specifically. I've not worked as a journalist, be outside of the documentary space. But, like a project, it's like I said earlier, you are the one that's driving it forward, and no one's going to make it happen other than you or your team, your partners, the partners you bring with you. But part of that is that you really, like, we need support. You need to make money. You need to pay your rent. Like, you're not going to think about your creative documentary film if you're stressing out about paying your rent. So, don't think like, well, I need to just leave everything I'm doing and go do this. It's just, you need to support your life and make it happen. That's part of the project, is genuinely making sure you can actually give it the attention it needs.
Tavleen, what's your question in 30 seconds?
Hi, I'm Tavleen, and I work at NBC. I'm in the social news gathering team. But prior to this, I did documentary filmmaking. I did my master's in documentary at Columbia. I'm just wondering, for those of us who are employees at NBC who may not be as involved in the documentary teams here, I was wondering, how can we best get involved in our capacity with documentary at NBC, or help out in any way in our current roles?
Awesome. Who wants to answer that?
I can jump in. I would say there's often events that we're doing for employees that is a great way to just introduce yourself to the team. For me and my team, when we are pitching and reviewing things, we love being able to go to small little focus groups of employees to just to get a feel for your thoughts and things like that. So I recommend networking, finding those opportunities, attending them as often as you can, and asking them questions, speaking up like you're doing now.
Anybody else?
I would just add, Tavleen, I don't know where you're based, but I mean, if you're at 30 Rock, like, let's get coffee, just reach out. The NBC News Studios team is based in New York, and they produce documentaries in-house. And then there are also lots of people at the NBCU Academy who can speak to, both roles that you are currently in now. But life is long, and there are opportunities that may come for where you are now and where you'd like to go. So if you can, again, articulate where you'd like to go, other people can kind of support you in that process. Thank you.
Hey, Tavleen, thanks a lot for that. I'm going to read a couple questions from the chat, and y'all can respond as you'd like. And Stacey, you could mute just for a second, and we'll get straight to you. Stacey, I don't know if you can mute. Thank you. Great. Zaki Morgan says, when presenting sensitive material through documentary filmmaking, what are some key ethics to keep in mind to maintain respect towards the communities in your projects, while also trying to display an accurate depiction of their realities? That's from Zaki Morgan. Also, another question from Tracy Hopkins. My name is Tracy Hopkins. I'm a journalist and doc producer. Brandy, can you please post your contact info? I co-produced an award-winning documentary about tap dance and Broadway showman Maurice Hines that's streaming on Stars. And so there you go, Brandy, if you can. That's from Tracy.
Yeah.
And Isabel Langston, I think she asked a question earlier, but I'll go to it again. For those of us who might not have easy access to a camera or tripod, how do you feel about people who utilize iPhone to capture footage? This could be more so for those who don't have the proper equipment. So Isabel, about equipment and how to get and how best to make those choices. Zaki asking about sensitive material and being sensitive to the communities you report on and that you're covering. Who would like to take either one of those? Go.
I can take the first one. So I just put into the chat this awesome resource that's free. It's put together by the Documentary Accountability Working Group. It is a 30-page long report that you can ask yourself, the members of your team, and their participants on the film all of these questions to really investigate how you're using power, how you were thinking about the impact of the film on the lifelong relationship that you're going to have with the protagonist, because it's not like we make a film and then the people in it disappear, or that you all stay, or like don't remain in contact. The documentary community is really moving towards thinking about, you know, the experience of making a film with the community as a lifelong relationship that is watered through trust, integrity, and mutual benefit and reciprocity. So this framework is fantastic. We've shared it with all of our fellows, and also you can look up I'll put it in the chat because it's a bit long, the title, but there's a group at American University that's constantly thinking about ethics and documentary accountability, and really thinking about frameworks for how do we stay ethical in this sort of unregulated environment that doesn't have some of the ethical frameworks that exist in journalism, and building those out. So thank you for that question. It's really important.
Yeah, it's a very good question for me, Zaki. Thank you so much. It is also, I mean, with the criticism of covering such sensitive communities is realize where will they be after you leave? Where will they be when they're up on the screen? And one test is whatever you say and whatever you put out there and whatever you film, what if it's on the front page of the New York Times? What if it's on the main page of YouTube? Is that what you want to say? Is that okay for folks? Andrew, when you get on camera, we'll go to you. Gene and Conrad, I wanted to get your advice about the iPhone question.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, ultimately, you know, capturing a moment is capturing that moment. I'm not particularly wedded to any particular format, but I'm also not, a buyer. So I can't, I can say that, the story is the point, and the moments and the characters are the point. The quality of the footage is, irrelevant as far as I'm concerned, but, Netflix would have a different answer for that, I'm sure.
Sure. Dean?
I agree. I do think that access is a huge thing, and sometimes a small camera or iPhone can give you better footage than like a huge fancy camera. So it really depends. I think there's a documentary called Unrest that was filmed mostly with webcam and iPhone footage, and if it makes sense for the story, like why they shot it on that, like I think it's fine. I agree with what Conrad said about story being the most important thing.
Make sure you get good sound. You can use the iPhone. Make sure you get good sound. All right, I'm going to go to Stacy, then Dylan, then Andrew. Yes, come on down, Stacy. What's your question?
Hi, sorry about the technical difficulties.
No problem.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Stacy Mills, and I want to talk about health-related documentaries. I have a concept around somebody from educator, Tuskegee study, health equity, etc. I have a great producer, and he'll probably edit it too. But to get started, well, I'm new to it, so I'm trying to learn. But to get started, he's like, okay, so, you need to raise X, Y, Z amount of money. So I'm not here just to ask you about money, but what a great place to be if I'm looking for some. But if you all could give me some insights as to how to move forward.
Stacy, thank you for that. Dylan, what's your question?
Oh, dang. Okay. So, all right. The camera's working.
We're going to get two questions is what's going to have. Stacy and Dylan are both going to ask. Is your question bang, Dylan?
Gotcha. Oh, I have a quick question. So I'm a student at UCLA, and I directed and produced a film, a documentary last year in the Indonesian community. And I had just finished editing it, and I sent it out to the subjects of the film. And afterwards, they told me that there were some practices in the film that the community was doing that they didn't want to have like shown in any film festival or just distributed. And it was one of the main focuses of the film. So I was just wondering, like, how do you mitigate something like that and just make sure that if you're doing something that you're passionate about, that everyone's on board.
All right, two great questions. Let's Stacy's question about, it's always the big one. How do we get the juice to keep this thing going? And then Dylan with, when your subjects do change or express some concern about the topics. Out to our panelists.
But also, can I just say this? This is health-related African-American subject content.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you,
So thanks, Stacey. Both of the documentaries I put in the chat are African-American health-related documentaries. They both were successful and took different paths. One was went on a more independent path at first and did creative distribution at the end. The other one was picked up by a distributor. I don't know if anyone in the panel knows where Aftershock went, but it was definitely acquired. And one is about maternal mortality rates. The other one is around the film that Brandy was mentioning earlier, having to do with like an undiagnosed sort of disability that comes on maybe due to a
chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah, thank you. So the thing I would say to you as a funder is we don't fund necessarily for subject matter. We really fund based on the strength of the story and the artist. So I would actually backpedal the way you're thinking about it. There are always discrete funders who fund for thematics, but those are not the big ones. The big ones are thinking about who is telling the story. So like we said earlier in this panel, really the way that you would want to pitch this is, who are you? What is your relationship to the people on film? Where does the film take place? All of these questions help us root us in a moment and a community. And that's what you're going to need to do first before you can kind of go forward, is to really think about where does the film take place and who's in it?
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, to piggyback on Janelle's, I just want to say, those films, for instance, it's a really good practice to find films that have a similar story or whatever, and look through the credits and start Googling the executive producers and the companies that have logos on it. And those would be good people to approach with a project, because they obviously are interested in that story, that kind of story.
I'll also add grant programs. We announced one last year. We haven't announced one for this year yet, but not to say that's not happening, but look for grant programs for finishing funds as well.
Thank you.
Anybody to Dylan's question?
I can speak to that to some extent.
And Stacey, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stacey. That's difficult, Dylan, and I think ultimately, if they don't want it to be shown, you can't show it. So it is, but that doesn't mean, basically you need to have a conversation and truly kind of come to some understanding. Especially if it's super key to the movie, in the future, that you be very, very clear up front, what. I understand the complication, because, it's like having an uncomfortable conversation before filming can be sort of difficult, but I can tell you, and as a producer, that's one of my roles on set, is genuinely having those conversations and getting permissions and getting people to sign releases and, just covering that. And you always have to approach that very sensitively, and understanding that if they don't want to be filmed, you shouldn't film them, and if they don't want it to show, you shouldn't show it. That just ethically. But that said, maybe there's some middle ground, or there's something where some element of the thing can be shown, or of the the moment. It's just a conversation. It just treat your subjects though with complete honesty and equity. It's their life. It's up to them. It's you're not there to catch something. You're there to feature.
Yeah, I just want to also add that the word subjects is a point of conversation in documentary filmmaking, and there's a push for calling them participants, and they're essentially participating. They're collaborating. So if you have to, what Conrad said, have a conversation with them.
And one of the things, Dylan, that I found, and I been following in my first two films, those who are terminally ill. And over a course of years, and this is a similar sensitivity, is at one level, it is trusting you. It is trusting that you will guard their story, that you will protect their story, that they are giving you a gift, and that you will treat it as such. And that's a relationship that you will build on the ground, either as a producer or director or as a DP. That's a special engagement. And it's also a skill that you'll develop over time, which is to build that trust and to say that, you know, I have done this before. I've told these stories and I protect what you protect. I am here with you. And that is so, and then you not only get participants, subjects to be more engaging with you, but when you reach the post interviews, whether you're doing it for years or just once, there won't be any buyer's remorse, because this also could be buyer's remorse, right? They realize, oh my gosh, I've had that before. Well, they'll go back and they go, I can't believe what I just said. I cannot believe I just told Dylan this thing. And they go, well, I don't want you to, I can't believe I showed you this thing. That's natural. And this is where it goes back to the relationship you build carefully at the get-go to show you are in it, you are there with them, and you will protect what they're giving you. And that's so important, because otherwise we are often known to be the helicopters, right? We're in and then we're gone. So I hope you're able to build that relationship. Don't give up on that. I would go back and sit down with them. I would have a coffee. I would let them know what you aim to be and what you aim to do. Excuse me. All right, great. Dylan, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. I want to quickly, and this is 30 seconds each, please. The pitch. What is your tip on the pitch? Because we got to pitch our documentaries. Brandy, you first. Your 30 seconds.
I feel like it's a lot of what we've already said. Tell me why your story is unique, or why it's unique to you, and tell me who you think it's for. Who's going to resonate the most with this story, and who do you hope to reach?
Perfect. Thank you. Jean.
So from an editor's perspective, I look at projects that have access and like a relationship that's a little bit deeper than just, you know, going in to shoot and then stop, you know, like a director relationship with the story and the participants.
Conrad?
Yeah, I think I want to know the kind of key important factors, you know, like and quickly, you know, and when you're pitching, you know, you really don't be afraid to change your pitch over time as people respond. It's really good to, in conversations at film festivals, chit chat, you know, tell people about your project. You'll get a sense of what people respond to, and you can adjust the way you present, you know, as that goes, you know.
Janelle.
This is so hard. I think in the funding capacity, you know, I see projects, you know, when they don't have any visual material, and then I also see projects when they're about to, you know, come to a film festival. And so I'm thinking about like how am I going to engage with this artist? Because like I said earlier, it's not just about one project. We're trying to build an ecosystem. Like I always think about my work as, you know, I'll know when I've made it, which was a question in an earlier panel, when I can sort of sit down and turn on Apple TV and there's, you know, it's full of films that I've helped support and that they're telling more inclusive, authentic stories that are also beautiful. So the question that I'm always asking is like, what is the world that you're trying to create cinematically beyond this one film, and who are you, the artist? So we can build this relationship together.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different things that folks will do. They'll do treatments and what have you. I would say the first thing you start working on is the press release of your film. And then you back out from that, is what I would say in terms of the pitch, because then you're thinking how the rubber hits the road. You're saying where it's going to be. Because, you know, what I figured out on the first film was like, I got to the press release phase, like, gee whiz, I have never thought about all these rubber hit the road things. So in your pitch, that's where the rubber hits the road. I mean, pulling all the ideas together from Brandy, Jean, Conrad, and Janelle is if you write your one-page press release now, you'll be able to understand what your real pitch is. So,
and be organized. I'm sneaking that one in there.
Yeah.
From the distribution side.
Definitely.
And I have another one
Organization
too. Oops.
is great.
Oh, I guess it's
yeah, and
over.
that's really
Oh.
So,
Oh, go on. I can't see the screen
whatever.
anymore.
I can't either.
I can see you all.
They've ended it on. Okay. If you just go through that, you can see it. All right. For those of you still with us, I do want to ask this, your final thoughts, 30 seconds. What inspires you about documentaries and becoming a documentarian? What inspires you about that? Janelle, you first this time.
What inspires me? Well, I think that, maybe something that's unsaid, and forgive me, I can't see you all, but hopefully you can hear me all right. I think what inspires me is like documentaries add to the conversation. There's what's presented in the news, and we do our best here at NBC that it is inclusive and true and expansive. And then there are the stories that take longer, right? They're the stories that take maybe 10 years to tell, that are more complicated and we need more time. So what inspires me is that it's a richer representation of reality, and it doesn't have to be the truth. It just has to be a truth. It has to be maybe your truth or the truth of a community. So it's multiplicitous, and it's longitudinal, and I think the nuance is where the beauty is. So it's just richer, I just think about it as like the double fudge ice cream,
Amazing. How about you, Conrad?
I think it's the capacity to change people's minds about things. That's even a documentary that wasn't, even documentaries that aren't really that great as far as movies. If the story and the characters are strong, they still change the world. They genuinely will change the culture. That's difficult for a lot of media to do, and docs can do it. So that inspires me. I mean, that's why I do it.
Brandy?
Oh man, this is a tough question because I feel like both answers were great, but I would piggyback off of the telling of the story. It's a really beautiful moment when we're at the premieres or the screenings and you're seeing folks in the audience resonate with what's happening on the screen, or their faces light up, or they see themselves. Those moments are priceless with me, and it makes what I do so much easier.
Jean?
Personally, I'm inspired by how hard it is. I feel like I'm constantly learning, and it's going to be a lifelong experience to just like be curious. And it's such an honor and privilege. I get to be very intimately, learning about a community I would have never otherwise, had interaction with. So it makes my life richer, and it's super fun. And I hope that our community continues to thrive.
Yeah, I'm going to echo all of four of your statements. I love being able to find the nuances and the details of who we are as people that we sometimes miss nowadays. And those little details that show and respect our differences actually allow us to find our sameness. That is what I really love about documentaries when they're done well, for the certain types that I like to watch. My friends, thank you. Brandy Henderson, Jean Ream, Conrad Beilhartz, Janelle Augustin. Thank you so much. And all of our chatters and participants and video questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get to all of them. We really appreciate you being here for NBCU Academy's Next Level Summit in our Expo conversation here, exploring documentary filmmaking. Of course, please stick with us. We've had a great candid conversation. If you'd like to hone your craft in documentary filmmaking, along with the resources and these great resources that are on camera right now, remember to keep in touch with NBCU Academy on our social platforms. And now, go out, enjoy your day. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you.